Russia First Channel. First question to President Putin. How do you estimate the readiness of Ukraine for the ceasefire? We have received some information from the Americans. And the second question, is Russia and Minsk coordinating? Is Moscow coordinating its position with Minsk on this issue? As for readiness of Ukraine for the ceasefire, I'll tell you my estimation of this. But first of all, I would like to thank the President of the United States for paying so much attention to regulating the conflict in Ukraine. Of course, we all have lots of current issues to deal with. And the chairman of China and the Prime Minister of India, heads of states of Brazil and South Africa, they are dealing with this issue and they're paying a lot of attention to this. And we're grateful for this. And we're hoping that their activity, we understand that their activity is aimed at reducing loss of human life in the conflict. Secondly, is we agree with the proposals for the ceasefire, but our position is based on the assumption that the ceasefire would lead to a long-term peace, something that would remove the initial reasons for the crisis. As for the readiness of Ukraine to ceasefire, there was a meeting between Americans and Ukrainians in Saudi Arabia, and it looks like a decision that is taken by Ukrainian side under American pressure. In reality, I am completely convinced that Ukraine had to ask Americans insist on this based on the situation on the ground. And what is the situation on the ground? Some of you have noticed, maybe you've seen, that I went to Kursk region yesterday and I listened to the report of the Chief of Staff, head of Sever Group, commander of Sever Grouping, on the situation in Kursk and the incursion into Kursk region. What is happening there? The situation there is completely under our control, and the grouping and the military grouping that entered that region is completely isolated and is under fire control. The commandment of the military, Ukrainian military, is lost. The command is lost on that territory. A couple of weeks ago, Ukrainians were trying to leave the area in small groups, but today it is not possible. They are now trying to leave in groups of 2 to 3 people because everything is under our control. They completely abandoned their equipment and it's impossible to take it away. That's guaranteed. And if there will be a physical blocking of that region within the next few days, then it will be completely impossible to leave the area. There will be 2 ways to leave, either to die or to surrender. And in these conditions, in this context, I think it would be great for Ukrainian side to achieve a truce for at least 30 days. And we are for it. However, there's a nuance. First of all, so what is happening with that area of incursion in Kursk if we stop our military action for 30 days? What does that mean? That means that all the people that are there, military people, Ukrainians that are there, will have the opportunity to leave without the fight. We will let them go without all these people who committed crimes. Or they're going to surrender. So that's unclear. How are we going to resolve other issues on the whole of the front line? And that's about 1,000 kilometers. And as you know, Russian military are now on the offensive on all areas of the front. And they're creating the conditions where they will be blocking or surrounding large formations of Ukraine. So how are they going to use these 30 days? Are they going to use it in order to continue the forced mobilization in Ukraine, in order to supply weapons to those areas, in order to newly mobilized units to undergo training, or none of this is going to happen? Then we have a question. How are we going to resolve the issues of control or verification? How can we be guaranteed that none of this is going to happen in the future? How are we going to control this? I think on the level of common sense, everyone understands this. This is a very serious question. Who is going to give orders to cease fire? And what is the value of these orders? Can you imagine about 2,000 kilometers? Who is going to determine who and where violated this agreement? That's an area of 2,000 kilometers. And then who is going to blame who? The violations of this agreement. All of these are questions that need to be thoroughly studied on both sides. So the idea in itself is correct and we support it, but there are questions that need to be discussed. And I think we need to discuss this with our American partners. Maybe we need to have a call with President Trump and discuss this. But the idea in itself to stop this conflict in a peaceful way, that's something that we support. I'd like to point your attention that President Putin has said more than what the question actually required, and he expanded a little bit on the issues of the future meetings with American partners. It's difficult to add anything, but I would like to say that we've got a single position with the Russian Federation. Also, all agreements that are to do with the conflict in Ukraine, we have always followed and complied with our agreements with Russia, and we will continue to comply with these agreements. It wasn't Russia or Belarus who were the main reason for what is happening there now. And when we began our negotiations process, a few days after the start of the conflict in Gomel region, we said, let's stop this war. And we spoke with Vladimir Zelensky. Let's not look for those who are at fault. Let's stop this now, because later you will have to be responsible for the war on the territory of Ukraine. And I said, look, remember that tomorrow the government in United States will change, and where are you going to be? And it's like I saw the future. And most important thing is that we are keeping the contact with Americans and with other Western powers without disclosing it, without talking about it too much. And I always said that he is an inexperienced guy, and he was just pushed to take part in that war. And when he got elected, he had all the cards in his hands, and he was in a position to stop fighting in Donbass. And he said, "How are we going to conduct the elections?" And I said, "Look, you had all these independence, you had your currency, and what is happening now? You don't have your currency, you've got people suffering, and you've got war going on." This is something we discussed at that time. He did promise that he would stop the war. Why did he not fulfill his election promises? As for our position, it is a unified position. We have met with journalists, and I was talking about the future at the time when we had a meeting with journalists. And I said, if Russia and America agree on something, then it will be the end for Europe and for Ukraine. And we see that Europe is conducting itself in a very myopic way, not looking into the future. We know our interests, we know our goals, and we've discussed this with President Putin. We see that Zelensky was humiliated in the White House and everywhere else. He had to really think about sitting down and agreeing. You will see that nobody is going to help Ukraine. So at the beginning of the war, did the Americans ask anything about the minerals? No. But now they're talking about it. They never talked about it before. They will have to comply now. And they will take all of these minerals, and it doesn't matter if it's this president or the new president that comes, he will have to comply with these agreements. So let them think. So we are on the right side. I would like to add on the pipe for Europe. If Russia and America agree on something, indeed, if US and Russia agree to cooperate in the field of energy, then the gas pipeline to Europe can be provided, can be ensured. And this will be of use because they will then get cheap Russian gas. That's what I meant, yes. I understood you, yes. As for the situation on the ground that I mentioned, it is changing very rapidly. Yesterday, during the report, the commander said that Suja would be in our hands tomorrow, and this is what happened. And I would like to thank our soldiers for achieving this objective. And I'm sure that all of the objectives in this Kursk incursion area will be achieved, just like all the objectives on all the front line. So we are now taking over all of these small villages that are surrounding Suja, one by one. And depending on the situation on the ground, we will agree our next steps on how to stop this conflict, and also how to achieve acceptable terms for everyone. ONT channel. To continue this topic, possibly the negotiations on Ukraine is the topic that is discussed most of all in Belarus and everywhere else. Will the interests of Belarus be taken into account as the closest neighbor of Ukraine? What other wishes do you mean? The wishes of Belarus in the negotiations? I don't quite understand your question, but I can just say in general that the interests of Republic of Belarus, given our relationships, interests, whether we talk about our partners across the ocean or with our neighbors, all of these interests are always taken into account. Within the framework of the Union State, we assume that we have a common concept and our bodies are cooperating very closely. We work on Eurozes, in Eurozes area, and we've got very deeply connected cooperation in economics, in rail production. For this reason, we can't possibly not take into account the interests of Belarus, because any step that we are taking in any direction affects both us and Belarus. So taking Belarus into account is completely in line with the interests of the Russian Federation. I think that this question came up with the suggestion of those who fled abroad. They are saying that when Russia and America agree, they will not take into account Belarus' interests. I'd like to say, first of all, I'm not trying to go anywhere. I'm not going to try to participate in these negotiations because we've got somebody participating in there who is very well aware of our interests, and he is not going to concede our interests. So if people believe that negotiations between US, Russia, and Ukraine somehow damage the interests of Belarus, that is not true. It wasn't. I couldn't even understand the question. How can we not take into account the interests of Belarus? That would go against our own interests. But I hope I answered your question anyway.